Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Miroslav Bardovic, and I hope I pronounce your name right. How are you doing
I'm
today?
good, Caroline. And yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for saying yes. And of course, I would love to introduce you to the audience first. So, you are a TEDx speaker, facilitator, and best-selling author who has worked with over 20,000 people globally. You are the founder of the Enlivened. You have to help me with the pronunciation. Enlivened Speaking
Enliven.
Institute.
Enliven Speaking Institute.
Enlivened Speaking Institute, thank you, where you teach speakers to deliver authentic messages and build trust. Your best-selling book, Give Them Goosebumps, focuses on the power of presence in public speaking. Miroslav helps leaders and entrepreneurs communicate with greater depth and authenticity by connecting mind, body, and spirit. Welcome to the Inspired Podcast, Miroslav, and you are gone now. You are here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Bardovic.
Yeah, thank you for having
Yes.
me.
My first question to you is, how does embodied presence transform the way speakers connect with their audience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Caroline. So, in the old style of speaking, it's primarily like recitation driven. People write down a script, they memorize the script, they get on stage and they recite the script. Whereas embodied presence is really about being present with our audience when we're on stage and delivering from that place. And I just actually did. I have a group of students I work with for 3 months, and some of them were just delivering their stories in a little community tonight. And one of them was like, "Oh, I finally get this. It's like I could feel the aliveness of the story wanting to come through me, and it didn't need a script. It's like I was just there and I was available, and the story poured through me." I was like, "Yeah, exactly." And when you're that intimate with your story or whatever you're sharing, your audience can't help but listen.
Yes, I can relate to that. It's the same with doing podcasts, for example. There's a difference in when I let the questions come through my heart, right? Body, mind, and spirit. You mentioned this, or when I read them from my script. But I also love
Completely.
my script. So yeah, we talked about how you help your audience. What inspired you to become a speaker?
So this is a bit of a funny question. I don't know if there was a moment of inspiration for me. I don't know if there was a moment where I was like, "Oh, great, this is something I want to do." Lucky me. Um, I think that there's two key things that drew me in this direction, though. One of them was when I first started meditating after I had selective mutism growing up. So I was very shy. I was very introverted and painfully so. Like most of the time, I just couldn't express myself, and I used to stutter. So even if I tried, I was just like blocked with all of that. When I started meditating, my meditation teacher, I still remember sitting down across from him. So I didn't have a partner. Everyone else had a partner in this exercise we're doing. It was my first day there. And he taught us an exercise. We had to teach each other. I was shy and awkward and quiet. So I sat there. In the end, he saw me by myself. He's like, "You come over here." And I taught him the exercise. And as I taught him, he kind of went really silent. And he had these glasses he pulled to the tip of his nose. And he looked at me over the glasses and he goes, "You're a teacher. You have to teach and speak and bring this to the world." And at the time I was still very closed and I didn't want to hear that. And as I started teaching, I found it was a lot like meditation. If I could be present and stay in my heart, the words would pour out of my mouth. So that was like a major thing. And I realized the more I started speaking and the more I poured myself into it, the more healing, inspirational, alive it made me. And it was just a sense of, people kept inviting me to do more of it, and I kept saying yes. But it was never a thing of like, I dream to be a speaker and this is my gift to the world. It just felt like a service and the path I had to walk.
Wow, this is very inspiring. So it was always there, but you didn't see it, you were not aware of it, and your teacher was your meditation teacher. And he saw
Yeah,
something, let's say your higher self, we can say this. Maybe there
yeah, I
are
think
other
we can say
words
that.
for it. Yeah. And then you just accepted the idea. You said yes.
Very slowly. It's probably been we're probably approaching 2 decades now since maybe I first said yes. So, earlier on, it was just teaching meditation. And then meditation turned to workshops, and workshops turned to retreats. And, back then also started teaching yoga, but that was all very gradual steps with a lot of resistance. Like, yeah, it was a very slow process, but I found whenever I took a significant step on the journey, it's like life or the universe would just reward me. It's like, I remember the first time I took on a one-on-one client and the first session I ever did, and I avoided it for a long time. And I was in New York at the time when I finally said yes. Like I was outside of Australia and my usual situation, and one friend said to one of her friends, Miroslav's very intuitive and he can support you with this thing. She came up to me. She was like, can I do some work with you? And we did a session. We were in New York, and I still remember after we finished the session, she paid me, and I was in so much bliss. It was like there was so much bliss flowing through me, I couldn't even feel my body. And I remember getting on the train and people couldn't stop looking at me as I walked down the train to have my seat. And it was just like this response from life going, you have to keep doing this. Like you have to keep following these things even if you're scared and afraid. This is the path for you. And it's been countless moments like that where it's just like, keep going. This is the way.
Oh, I love that. So we have to pay attention to the signs, let's say, they that are sent to us, becoming aware of if this feels right, then it is the right way, right?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a blessing, yes, what you told me, because I thought normally it's the other way around. So as you said, people set the goal, oh, I want to become a speaker, speak on stages, and then they put all the effort in, and it's not healthy. It's hard work for them because the belief is that way. And then they have to practice yoga or meditation to calm themselves and to release the stress, right?
Yeah.
And you did it the other way around, so to say, you were guided decades, you said 2 decades, and then now you are the speaker on stage that you were meant to be, right?
Yeah, but it's forever evolving. Like I look back, even when I was teaching yoga and running these meditation workshops and thing, I was learning all the things I'm utilizing now. So it's like there was no, and for a long time, I wished I could be further ahead. I was like, I want to be on the bigger stages now. And life was like, no. And for a long time, I was quite broke during those years as well. So there was a lot of suffering involved with, okay, I can see this is the direction I'm going, and I'm making very little money at the moment, and I don't know how to get ahead. There was a, like, after the path awoke in me, there was definitely a wish and a desire to be further ahead. But being where I am now, I look back on it and I can see how all of those years were formative in shaping what it is I do now. Like I wouldn't be able to do what I do unless I'd spent the 5 6 years teaching yoga, because it's given me an awareness that you don't learn through public speaker training.
I understand that I don't understand. This is what we say. Okay, my next question is, can you share a moment where a client speaking or leadership style dramatically improves through the power of presence?
Yeah, so last year I spoke at the Professional Speakers Association of Australia, and there was whenever I speak, I try to make my sessions a bit practical. So it's one thing to communicate theory, but I'll typically get people up and demonstrate how the theory works. And in this one instance, I asked for a volunteer or someone that wanted to be a part of that, and an older gentleman who'd served in the Australian Navy, and he was actually the captain of the ship in the Navy, so quite a high up position. Um, got up and he went to share his story, and I let him share a little bit, and then I did a few tweaks, just inviting him to allow the audience more deeply into himself. And he started crying. I can't tell you right now if the tears came out straight away, but it definitely felt like the emotion of actually letting people into that moment that he experienced on the ship. Like you could feel the tears streaming down his face, and members in the room as well started crying at how deeply he was letting them in and allowing that connection to build. And it left ripples for the remainder of the conference. I had people coming up to me the whole time saying like, wow, never seen anything like that. One after my session, I walked out, and a woman followed me out, crying as well, and just saying, "I don't know what that was, but I know I need to connect with you." So that was one in the more recent history that was really touching, just to meet so deeply.
I love that. I never heard of this before. Of course, we always know when I think of speaking on stage, then you prepare, as you said, a script or something, or you memorize it and then you recite. You talked about that. And you are doing your transformations on stage with people.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it shows up, and I find, for me, it's like that old school style of speaking that's overly prepared, and I kind of call it. Sometimes it can very easily go into posturing. It's like we're losing the essence of what it means to be human, which is connection. Not doing techniques to create connection, but genuine, authentic connection. That's really what we're starved of. I think the research even suggests that all addiction comes from a lack of connection.
You have to say this again. You are convinced that all addictions come from the lack of
I'm
connection.
not convinced. I definitely find for myself that when I'm in deep connection, I don't really crave anything. But I believe there was a TED talk that said that the root of all addictions is a lack of connection.
Thank you so much. No, there was a lack of connection in the internet connection. This is why I asked you to repeat it. And thank you for clarifying. And it always happens at the right moment, right? So my next question: what are the biggest challenges leaders face when trying to foster emotional intelligence and presence within their teams?
So I think one of the challenges is that we think that emotions and vulnerability has to look like therapy, and that we don't have time for it. And I find that what actually happens is, if we can allow people deeper into our worlds, we create trust far more rapidly, because people can feel that on an unconscious level. And this isn't about what we say, it can be, but sometimes it's actually about what we don't say. How deeply we're willing to let people in to the space between our words. How deeply we're allowing ourselves to communicate the feeling behind what we're saying, as opposed to just repeating words. And I think this is massively overlooked, because you can get to know people far a lot more if they're willing to if they're willing to communicate the depths of who they are. And it's also scary, which is why we find it easier to hang out on the surface.
Yes, this is why I started this podcast to, to let people into that space that I didn't do like for all my life before. And you said, and it is very important. I never heard this before about when it comes to vulnerability and the other stuff. Then it looks like therapy because and we don't have time for this. And it's true because we think, or I have the same impression because when someone starts to tell a, let's say we call it victim story, like, right, they start to tell their story and we think, oh, go away because I don't want to get this too,
Mm,
or the people want something from me, like pity or something. What would you
yeah.
say, or how would you deal with that in work situations?
Well, I think we do have to be clear that we're at work for a certain outcome and purpose, and that has to stay top of mind. And the workspace isn't a therapy space, and the stage isn't a therapy space. And like for me, that's like an obvious and clear thing. And there is different cultures of how, like work cultures, into how deeply we allow and embrace emotion, and that's going to depend on roles as well. So I think there is a time and a place, but also we're seeing the humanization of corporations, at least in Australia. That's a big thing, with psychological safety at the moment becoming something that's being regulated. So there's definitely more of a attention being poured into how the workplace affects us emotionally, and not pushing that under the carpet anymore, actually bringing it to the surface. And for me, the next stage of this conversation is, how can this actually enhance working relationships as opposed to hinder them? So if it goes into a therapeutic space, it's like, yes, that needs a time and a place, but it's not directly going to link to the outcome a lot of workspaces are looking for. But I am curious what happens when we start actualizing this from more of a powerful place. And I get that sometimes it can be clunky to get there as we work out all the different bits and pieces.
Yes, I think, yeah, it's true. It's a difference whether you are in the therapy situation or at work. The question is how can we bridge the two, or that the company you work for is supporting the person who has a problem, or to become aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've found, and I've trained a lot of speakers now, is that sometimes a useful way to look at this is what's the part of me that's been suppressed that's looking for expression? Because that's usually where we have a lot of stuck emotion. And if that part can feel safe enough to express and to be received, to be genuinely heard, not like, oh, yes, I'm listening and I hear you. Like it doesn't want conscious, active listening, it just wants real listening. When it's actually received, that becomes a power. It's like now that person has more range to communicate parts that they've never had access to before. But for that to start moving and to become like an appendage, like the way they could utilize their arm and know the effect it has, it needs safety to start the process. And I find a lot of what I'm offering when I train people is the safety to access, to be able to access and start utilizing those parts of themselves
Yes, without being judged. Or
completely.
yeah. Yeah, this is what it's about, safe spaces. And yeah, and if you don't feel safe in your space now, then feel free to change the space. And if it's not possible, then please reach out to someone who can help you. There's Miroslav, of course. He's amazing. You can learn so much. I learned so much. So, my next question about your coaches and mentors. You already mentioned the one who saw the greater, or the higher self, your
Hmm.
bigger self. And what else? Do you have coaches and mentors for yourself? And who was the best coach you ever had?
Oh, that's big questions. So let me go from the first one. Yes, I have one, two, at least two active coaches right now, or mentors, you can call them one way or another. One of them is supporting me with my speaking business. So specifically looking on, what needs to happen for that business to keep growing in the direction that it's destined to grow, which I find is very different than speaking. And also for me, recognizing that at one point became my spiritual path, just as much as meditation still is. It's like this business having its own life and expression in the world is an extension of that spiritual path. And I also have another mentor who supports me with the spiritual side and really deepening and remembering who I am beyond the dance of Maya, if you will. Wow. The most, I don't know if you said the most important or most valuable mentor I had. That's a really tricky question. Um, and I'm like, I don't know if my tongue could express just one mentor. I've had so many amazing mentors in different areas of my life. Um, I mean, you know what I would say? Like the one that's actually on my heart is my friend Charmaine Adam. And I say this because she was both a friend and a mentor, and she was there for me countless times when I really needed support. And beyond just being there as like another human, she had an immaculate relationship to, she still does have an immaculate relationship to her intuition. So when she spoke back to me, it wasn't just like talking to another friend and getting like, conscious feedback. It's like she would listen to all the layers and the depths of pieces that I wasn't even aware of. And so many times I found myself coming back to her, like, months or sometimes even a year later and being like, oh, that thing you told me about, it's true. I just wasn't aware of it at the time.
I
So it
love.
was really valuable having someone like that in my life and still having her in my life. But yeah, for some challenging years, it was just super, super, super. I just feel like my heart melting as I speak about it. Dear to me.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. And it's so important that we choose people who support us, right? Not that tear us down or something. A supportive environment. So important. Thank you so much. My next question about your goals and intentions. Do you set goals, or what is one of your next projects?
I mean, I don't even think of them as goals, but yeah, I definitely have directions I'm moving towards. The project right now is working a lot more with the corporate space. So that's been taking my time and attention. And then the other one is really, it's like over these last year or two, it's just taking the work a lot more internationally. So I've had people in Europe ask if I can run some trainings there. I was in Europe speaking in Mind Valley last year, so I got to know a lot of people in the space. And a few of them asked me if I can come back and run some of my trainings over there. So we've been in conversation around that, and um, yeah, just looking forward to the expansion of those next bits.
I love that. Thank you so much. I will see you in Europe, of course. And two of your main topics are what I understood, depth and authenticity, right?
Hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, I would say they're the main themes. As far as topics go, trust is one of the main topics, and the other one is, speaking with authenticity. Well, we want to call it presence or authenticity, but that's a topic.
Wow. Thank you so much for our interview. I enjoyed your your presence, so to say. Yes, it's true.
Likewise.
It was a little bit different than before. Thank you so much. Episode 399, by the way. And now it's time for your final thoughts to the audience.
My final thoughts are keep listening to your intuition. And if you don't know what that is or what it sounds like, there was a beautiful piece of advice a woman once gave me where she said, your intuition is likely the thing that keeps stirring in the back of your mind, the thoughts you keep having and you're not acknowledging. And I remember when she said it to me, I was like, it's really clear the direction I have to take. And of course, this means having a mental, uh, sound mind. I remember I shared this with a friend once, and he laughed, and he was like, "I can't do all the things my mind tells me." I'm like, "No, not those thoughts, but the genuine ones where you're like, okay, this is the path calling to me, and am I willing to follow it?" I think that's one of the most useful things I've ever been told, and something that still comes through my mind now. Although I find now I don't wait as long to keep hearing it. I take the action in less time.
Take the action. That's the best message, but not any action. It is like not those thoughts you said, but genuine ones.
Inspired
It's your
action.
intuition. Yes, inspired action. This is what this podcast is about. And I enjoyed our interview. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please reach out to Miroslav. Check his social media accounts. I just checked your TikTok. I told you that. But you are also available on LinkedIn, I assume.
Yes, LinkedIn and Facebook is where I'm most active, so you can find me on either one of those.
Thank you so much. And see you in the next episode.